Hello everyone, I'm K-Swope. The Halloween second requel, also titled Halloween, was so successful that it got itself a sequel. But is that sequel worth your time? And ladies and gentlemen, that's a very convoluted question. Two things. First of all, we're going to answer that convoluted question by the end of this video. And we're going to start by showing you this is K-Swope's Halloween timeline graph. As you can see, Halloween's gone through a lot of changes and reboots and requels and a lot of things like that over time. This October of 2024, we are planning on tackling the entire Halloween 40 years later timeline. This is our second to last stop, Halloween Kills. We already did Halloween earlier this month. We did Halloween 2018, and then we are doing Halloween Kills now, and the plan is to do Halloween Ends next week. But all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the sequel that this is a movie to was also titled Halloween. It's now known as Halloween 2018. The other one's known as Halloween 1978. So it's a little confusing there. It's the sequel to the 2018 Halloween film. And it is one that we're going to talk about, and we're going to ask, hey, is this movie worth your time? And we're going to dive into things. So, this is your first video of mine that you are watching. Once again, welcome. I'm K-Swope. Hope you stick around. Hope you enjoy. What we're going to do is we're going to take this movie. I just rewatched it not too long ago, and I have a list of the good things I found about the movie and the bad things I found about the movie. We're going to talk about it, and then we will discuss our final verdict in the end. So, that being said, why don't we go ahead and dive right in? The good things. This movie starts with a brilliant opening flashback that really kind of sets the tone and the vibe. And the good thing about it, and I'm going to compare this to the original Halloween a lot because that's basically the gold standard for Halloween movies. The thing in this movie is that flashback really sets the tone. And just like Loomis does at the beginning of the first Halloween movie, it's telling people why they should be afraid of Michael Myers. If you have not watched the previous Halloween movies, this movie, straight from the start, sets that, and it sets it very, very well. Because it picks up right after the events of the first Halloween movie, after Loomis glances over the balcony and sees that Michael is no longer there, and he's running around. It's basically the police. They end up finding him. They find him at the Myers house, and basically, they get him, they arrest him, they almost kill him, they almost put him down, execute him. Sheriff Hawkins interrupts and stops that from happening, which is also very interesting too, because now we can see that Hawkins has a little more ties to Michael Myers and all that situation, a little more ties than we originally thought. And that kind of puts into perspective a lot of things from the last Halloween movie as to why he was treating Michael as such a serious threat, because he was there. And I guess he kind of feels like it's on him for everyone he kills afterwards, because he could have let all this madness stop, and so it's kind of his fault. And so we don't really dive into that very much in this movie. We dive into some other themes and stuff like that too. But if you look retrospectively back now on 2018 Halloween, it makes a little more sense as to seeing why Hawkins reacts the way that he does. In 2018 Halloween, it sounds basically like he's a good sheriff, and that's really just all you can ask for. So we don't really need to have that, but I think it's still interesting, because from here on, it's going to shape how we view Michael and his relation to Michael in the future going forward. Another thing that is inside this flashback that's really, really good is they bring an actor in, they put some prosthetics on him, and they have the lighting set up to play Dr. Loomis again. And between the mix of how he looked in that scene, and I think they got a separate actor to like record voiceover for him or whatever, it's looked and sounded incredible. It looked like Donald Pleasance was right there. And I know, sadly, he passed. Rest in peace, Donald Pleasance. But either way, it was really, really well done. And so there were a lot of really good things done in that opening flashback. Heck, that opening flashback would be a really good, almost like mini movie in and of itself. So moving things along, after the flashback, we then pick up with some of the events after the last Halloween film. And then we go into the opening credits. And let me tell you, these opening credits, true story. This is actually the first Halloween movie that I saw in theaters. And when I was watching it and the opening credits came on, I got chills. Because what's happening is, you got the iconic pumpkin in the Halloween franchise, right, during the opening credits. And what happens is, it's sort of zooming in toward past the pumpkin, and you're seeing multiple other jack-o'-lanterns lighting up behind it, like it's multiplying, which is very, very interesting. And the score itself, it sounds like, your iconic Halloween score. It doesn't sound as, sharp and kind of like, I'm going to describe the original score as kind of like spiky, really like bone chilling. But it's piano. It's sort of like acoustic, if you will, except they add a full choir singing some of the more background parts, if you will. And oh man, it's so good. It gives me chills every time. And again, I've talked about this a lot with the Halloween movies, but the score helps horror movies so much. And so far, this film has a really great start. Next thing I want to talk about that's really interesting is, picking up, going after everything that would have happened after 2018 Halloween. And basically, they left Michael in the basement with the house on fire. The idea being they'll burn him alive, burn the whole house down, and that's the end of Michael, right? Which would have been a good plan, except for the firefighters that show up. And so everybody kind of hates that. But there is a really good sequence where Michael's busting out of the house is on fire, and he's going and basically just slaughtering all the firefighters. And they've got all these big equipment things, and so he can get really brutal in that scene. But I mean, he takes down, like, I don't remember the exact number, but I want to say it was somewhere around 5 or 6 firefighters in this one sequence. And it's crazy. And that's something in this movie I really want to talk about theme-wise, I guess. It is the fear of Michael Myers. Because if we look back to the first Halloween movie, he kills, I want to say, like, I don't know, a handful of people. No more than 10 people in the first Halloween movie, including, the opening back in the 60s. So his body count is not that high in the first movie. In the last movie, in 2018, it was a lot higher. But in this movie, man, like, they don't hold anything back with Michael, making him a evil presence and super violent and vicious and just, like, kills almost everything. And it's really fascinating. I'm going to talk a little more about that later. But this scene with the firefighters is one of the scenes specifically that I really like. But with Michael's brutal kills, what it really does, again, and this is the important thing. I think this is the important thing for every horror movie. It gives me reason to fear the evil force, if that makes sense. So if I'm not afraid of it, then why should I be afraid for the people? Why should I care? Why should this and that? And so that's what I think this movie accomplishes very well, is Michael is relentless and he's brutal. And the other thing in this movie, too, that I might be a psychopath for saying this and enjoying this. In fact, I probably am. I'm probably on an FBI watch list now as soon as I post this. But hyper-violence has always been very appealing to me. I don't know why. Again, I'm probably psychotic. But in this movie, there's just some really brutal, violent moments. And I'm a little squeamish, not going to lie. I'm like really desensitized in movies. In real life, very squeamish. Almost like the creativity of it. Oh my goodness, how or why did they think of this up? It's kind of astonishing to me. And it's so interesting in a very kind of dark way, I suppose. So the brutal kills and I guess, the violence and gore is just really unique. And I have a few specific examples I'll mention later on. Before we do, let's switch from that really dark tone to a more comedic tone. That comedic tone being Bob Odenkirk, because Bob Odenkirk makes I don't know if you want to call it a cameo maybe, in this movie. Because what happens is, back in the first Halloween movie, there was a guy named Bob. He's the guy who was in the house across the street from where Laurie was babysitting, who gets killed and he gets staked into like the wall and he's kind of chilling there. And then Michaels does that iconic head tilt, which is an incredible scene. But anyways, so Bob dies, unfortunately. A bunch of people are at this bar and they're talking, and because they're commemorating that it was 40 years ago tonight where all these terrible events took place in the first Halloween movie. And what happens is, someone comes on the news, they're talking about it, how Michael Myers is back out. He escaped from the Smiths Grove convoy or whatever. The bus flipped over, and they're showing clips, saying, oh, this is what happened last time he was free and stuff like that. And they show, for like a super brief second, they show a clip of one of the victims, who is Bob, right? Well, the photo that they used of Bob is actually a really old yearbook photo of Bob Odenkirk, the actor, good old Saul Goodman himself. And that's really funny, because I think I heard this somewhere, and I don't remember what my source is for this, but I heard someone say somewhere that they basically just Googled Bob 1978. They came across that photo of Bob Odenkirk, and it looked good enough that they were like, you know what, let's put it in and see if people noticed. And we noticed. So that's funny. I really like that. It doesn't really take me out of the film because it's kind of like a blink and you miss it kind of thing. It's just a really fun fact now that I know that I can look out for every time I see the movie. So that's fun. I really, really enjoyed that. Something else that's interesting in this movie too, the themes and kind of the idea of this movie. They're kind of making it about mass panic and how in moments of high emotional turmoil, when there's a lot of people, a lot of mob mentality, things don't turn out well and people make some really bad, poor decisions and some really bad stuff happens. And I really like that idea because, if we look in our world, we look at, I should say this where YouTube won't censor me. If we look at a certain disease, a virus, if you will, that was spreading around in the year 2020, you can see a lot of people being fear-mongered and making a lot of very poor decisions on a very mass scale because of fear, mass panic, if you will. And I think this movie kind of demonstrates what I think is a good example of what happens when that happens. And we can see that in this movie throughout the story of the one inmate who escaped that everyone thinks is Michael Myers, who eventually gets so scared of this mob. And the mob's scared too. They're all reacting out of fear. He gets so scared that he ends up being chased to the top of this hospital. And he ends up jumping off to his own demise. Because for one, he's mentally ill, but two, he's just scared. And then after that happens, they find him and they're like, oh, this guy wasn't Michael. We basically just lynched an innocent man for all we know. And so I think that is something that's very, very interesting. And I have a little more about it. It's a little more nuanced of an idea. I have a little more about it to talk about in the bad section. But we will get there shortly. In the meantime, I would also like to point out that I said in the last movie, in Halloween 2018, but you haven't seen that review yet, what are you doing? Check the card. In that movie, I talked about the sense of humor and how I feel like the humor was not as well balanced or as good as in the first Halloween film. And this movie still kind of has that pitfall. We'll get to that a little later. But there are two characters in this movie that are funny, and they're the right balance of humor, I think. Those characters being Big John and Little John. They are the couple that owns the Myers house. They bought it afterwards. They're funny. They're just kind of dumb funny. And so I enjoyed seeing them. They're not like too much haha in your face funny. At least not as much as some of the examples I could think of in the last Halloween movie. Maybe they're not also on the level of Loomis yelling from the bushes at Lonnie, because, I think that was just a perfect moment for the tone of the first Halloween movie. They're maybe not there either. They're not quite that good in terms of humor and how they use their humor. But they still are thoroughly enjoyable, and I like watching them. And again, they work as that good palate cleanser, but they're not too over the top. Another moment I want to point out specifically, it's a certain kill that I really like. Because of the movies, I think so many people have so many misconceptions about how guns are and how guns work. And this movie, one of the kills has to do with someone being kind of stupid with a gun. And I kind of think that's funny. But what happens is, there's these crazy mobs forming, trying to hunt down Michael and stuff like that. One of the groups goes out. They find Michael at this park. They are fighting him and stuff, and he's, killing them. And the one lady she's a doctor dressed as a nurse, and her husband is a nurse dressed as a doctor. That's kind of funny. She has a gun. She tries to shoot Michael with it. But she's too close to him, and he's in this car, okay? Michael kicks the car door open, and she ends up accidentally getting her own self in the face. And I'm like, oof. The thing I think that's why that's so funny is because guns are not as easy and simple to use as people think they are. So I think when someone dies in a movie as a result of improper gun use, I think that's pretty funny. It's a big misconception people have about guns, and Hollywood really plants so many bad ideas in people's minds about how they actually work and how they are used and how they should be used and this and that. And so, again, anytime I can see that in some way, shape, or form, I'm going to think it's funny and I'm going to appreciate it. So that was a fun kill. In that same scene before that happens, actually, another funny gun joke, actually. Marion Chambers is in this group, and Michael's at this car, and she points the gun at him. She's been shooting at him. She's been missing. Points the gun at him and goes, "This is for Dr. Loomis," and then pulls the trigger, and she's out of ammo. And then Michael proceeds to commit homicide, if you catch my drift. So that was pretty funny. Again, a funny joke with gun use, if you will. I think the good thing is, too, in a lot of movies, they tend to throw the idea of your gun, your clip, or whatever only has this many shots of ammo in it. They clearly didn't do that in this movie. So, again, gotta appreciate attention to detail when it comes to guns and how they actually work realistically. Something else that's worth pointing out too, building on all of these kills, all of this hyperviolence, all these things that Michael does, this, I would debate, might be, in my opinion, the scariest we've ever seen Michael Myers. And what I mean by that is this. If I existed in this universe, in this time when this is going on, and I was able to witness everything that he did firsthand, I would be terrified of Michael Myers. And I don't think I can say that about most of the other Halloween movies that I've seen anyways. I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen most of them. I will get around to seeing all of them. That's the plan, at least, with my timeline and what I'm going to do with the timelines in the future, but that's neither here nor there. But in the meantime, I think this is the scariest we've seen Michael. I mean, you could make a debate that there are some other movies which we will talk about eventually some other time. Something else. There are two things in this movie, two scenes that are kind of back-to-back, if you will, that are both really, really good and really, really engaging. It is the final battle, which I'm considering when it's Cameron and Lonnie and Allison are in the Myers house fighting Michael. That whole sequence is very intense, and I enjoy it quite a lot. The music is great. What's going on is great. It doesn't feel like it's a far stretch from the imagination as to what's going on, how people were reacting and everything like that. It seems pretty consistent, which is also very nice. And I just think that scene is very, very well done. But then that scene leads into Karen taking Michael's mask off and leading him to the mob. And then the mob start beating up Michael. And then Michael makes the comeback of the century. And he just lays waste to all of them. And the whole scene is just crazy. It's beautifully done. And it's insane. And it's really, really good at building tension. It's basically just the big climax of the whole film. All that third act stuff. Really action-packed. And I quite like it. And again, it shows you the absolute brutality and danger of Michael Myers. And that's what I look for when I'm watching horror movies for the most part. I want to look for something that would scare me, that I should be scared of. And this movie puts that out there so well. But there are something in this movie that does not do so well. So let's go ahead and start with that. The first thing I have written down here is the humor is still not quite there. I talked about Big John and Little John. I liked them. There are still some instances of people trying to be funny, trying to make jokes, trying to have these haha laugh moments that, again, they just don't feel right in this movie. Again, I keep going back to the first Halloween movie, and I brought this up earlier in this video as well. The scene where Loomis is yelling from the bushes at Lonnie, scaring him off. How it's a very subtle. It's not like haha laugh out funny, but it's kind of like gives you a grin funny. And it's just enough to cleanse your palate from all the violence to keep you from being desensitized, so that when we get into the big third act and climax of the movie, that we're ready for it. And I think that is done geniusly. I can't say that they use the humor as well in this movie or the last one, but I think they still do it a little better in this one than they do the last one because of how they handle Big John and Little John. Again, I enjoyed them quite a bit, but I can't say much else about the humor in this movie. I didn't appreciate it in most places outside of that. Unless you want to consider the dark irony, which is this is for Dr. Loomis, and then she's out of ammo. Because that, again, that's funny to me. Something else about this movie. I probably should have mentioned this a little more in depth in my last review for Halloween 2018, is there are so many lines that I feel are shoehorned in just either for trailers or to try to make these almost like forced dramatic moments. And one of those is when Michael goes back to his house and Little John finds him and goes, "Michael, you've come home." I'm like, you think he'd really say that? You think he'd really say that? No. He would say, "What the heck are you doing in my house? Get out." You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so stupid. I really, really hate that just like 2 or 3 second bit. If you were to cut that line out of the movie, honestly, it would make that scene way better. So, again, it's just stupid, honestly. I don't have any words to say it than to just call it stupid, because that's what it is. It's stupid. It doesn't add anything. It's just there for probably promotional material, even though I don't remember ever hearing that in a trailer or anything like that. I don't know. Again, stupid. Something I want to talk about, and this is going to sound like the opposite of something I said before, but hear me out. The social commentary in this movie, I don't think quite works. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I told you before about how I like the idea of the mass panic themes and the this and that and how it makes people act. The problem is, I like those themes, and I can see in our world, our society, how those themes are played out. And so there's a lot for me to chew on there. The only problem is, they don't come to any real conclusions about them, I guess, if that makes sense. So the mentally ill guy, he takes a plummet off the top of the hospital to his demise, and then everyone's just like, oh, yeah, we shouldn't have done that. But then they still go after Michael. And so, I don't know, it feels like they were going for something to be profound and more deep, and then they kind of just abandoned it for a really exciting third act, which it was a really exciting third act, and so I still enjoyed it, but I feel like it could have been so much more, and so it's a little disappointing to see that, because I feel like they undermined a really good message they could have had in order to make a more exciting and thrilling end of the movie. So it's kind of bittersweet, because I did like the final part, but then again, I do think that if it said something really profound, that would also have made the movie a lot better. So, I don't know. I really don't know how else to react to that. It's almost like I got to talk about, too. In horror movies, there's always reputations of characters doing really, really stupid things. And there is a really, really good example of that in this movie. It is when Allison, Lonnie, and Cameron go to the Myers house. Lonnie decides, hey, I'm going to go in. If I'm not back in this amount of time, come in after me. And I'm like, seriously, you got to stay in groups. They may have had some kind of chance against Michael if the three of them would have stayed together. But yeah, again, it's just a character making a dumb decision. Everyone knows the first rule of horror movies is you never split up from the party, because that's just going to put everybody potentially at risk of getting harmed and hurt. So, I don't know. I don't get the deal. It's just, I feel like the writers should have known so better by now, but they didn't. So, again, I really don't know what to think of that, other than it's just dumb. But this movie had a lot of good things to say about it, had a lot of bad things to say about it. Now, I know you guys are ready for my review, but before I do give my review and give my rating, there's a few things I need to talk about quick. A few rules of housekeeping I want to let you guys know about. First of all, hey, if you're on Instagram, go ahead and give me a follow. It's at @kswope_ on Instagram. I go there. Haven't posted a whole lot there yet, other than promoting my videos when they come out. I do have some ideas and some things I might want to try to do on there in terms of creating a more big social media presence, maybe making some reels soon, but I'm kind of working on what I want that to look like. But either way, go check that out. Also, if you want to follow me on X, I am on there. I'm pretty active on there. Don't post a whole lot, but I definitely go in. I comment from time to time on things, look at stuff here and there, trying to get some ideas. I do want to get more involved on X, so definitely check that out. And if you want to see my movies, what I think of certain films, go follow me on Letterboxd as well. You can find all those links, by the way, in my YouTube page. So go, again, check that out. And while you're there, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'd greatly appreciate that. And if you want to like this video, also greatly appreciate. And if there's anything you disagreed in this video, feel free to leave a comment, or if you think I missed something that was worth mentioning. I know I've talked about the social commentary, things of that nature. So if you think that I missed anything, you want to bring any of that up, hey, leave a comment, and I will gladly hear you out down there. But here's what you guys are really here for. You're here for my conclusion. You want to know how I rank this movie. Well, overall, honestly, this is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I know that's really controversial, but again, I really like this movie. Michael is terrifying, and I am very afraid of him, and that is a very good thing. When I watch a horror movie, I want to be afraid of the threat, and this movie does that oh so well. The story's a little bit dry, and it's got some problems here and there, but overall, I think this movie is a very, very good time, and I greatly appreciate it. And that's why I am going to give this movie a shockingly high, I think for most people, 8 out of 10 on my rating scale. And ladies and gentlemen, that is my review for Halloween Kills. Once again, I know I'm ranking this really high. I know a lot of people don't agree with me on this movie. That is why you can leave it in the comments, and I'll gladly engage with you down there. Pick your brain a little bit, see what you think, see if there's any broad strokes that I'm missing or things that maybe I didn't catch on that may change my opinion on things. I don't know. Again, I really like this movie. I'm not sure how willing I'd be to change my mind on stuff. But again, if you have any information that makes a lot of sense, it will change my mind. I try to be an open-minded person as much as possible. So go check that out. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for watching, and stick around to the end of the video. I am K-Swope, and I will see you in the next one.